Saumur, a small town on the banks of the Loire River in west-central France. Old-world craftsmanship still has a home here, where a 200-year-old facility built by Napoleon still stables horses and a saddle shop. In the spring of 2009, Pedro, Pedrini, and I, Cary, Schwarz, traveled here to learn from a classically trained leather craftsman named Jean Luc Parisot. We came here to advance our knowledge in designing, shaping, and hand sewing leather cases. Many of the tools Jean-Luc uses are familiar to us here in North America, but some of the techniques he uses are being lost to time. The project here Jean-Luc is beginning is a cylinder-shaped case. The ends are cut at an angle in order that they would butt up to one another nicely. Jean-Luc is laying down a light reference line that he will follow with a stitch marker in a moment.
Just what we like to do, you know, prototype of a saddle.
The grain sides are edged except where the seam will be down the side of the cylinder. Here we see a French-made stitch marker that has interchangeable wheels for different stitch lengths. Notice how the handle end of the tool is held against his shoulder to add more pressure and stability to the wheel. Also note the use of Jean-Luc's left thumb to help guide the stitch marker. Much of the sewing Jean-Luc does is with linen thread at 9 or 11 stitches per inch. Easier to sew that well. Here we see Jean-Luc pre-cutting the sewing holes using an awl and a piece of felt to help preserve the point of the awl. The sides of the cylinder are prepared here. Notice the angle of the awl. It's roughly 45 degrees. The leather is wrapped around an appropriately sized object so that this project can be clamped into a stitching horse and maintain the shape of the cylinder.
Then eventually it's going to get loose and undo it himself.
Threading the needle properly is one of the most important steps of hand sewing. Here we're using a small pair of side cutting pliers to carefully taper the end of this linen thread. The trick here is to wind up with a taper to the end. Linen thread always needs to be heavily waxed, especially on the tapered ends. Then the taper is twisted in the same direction as the twist on the thread. The point of the needle is then pushed through the thread where it is approximately half the full thickness of the thread. Needle is then pierced through the thread at least 2 more times. Here the thread is pushed up the needle toward the eye and the pointed end threaded through. The needle and awl are pulled in opposite directions so that the thread works its way around the eye. It is very important to have a smooth transition from needle to thread at the eye so that pulling it through the leather creates no resistance. Now we'll shift gears and show some techniques on a different type of case.
Ça me rappelle quand je suis allé au Maroc, tu sais, j'ai passé 6 mois à faire ça, à expliquer des tas de trucs. Les mecs me pondaient des problèmes que j'avais jamais eu auquel, tu vois, je sais même pas comment ils se démerdaient pour avoir ces problèmes-là, tu vois. Et moi, c'était hyper intéressant.
Here we get problems he never had before, so we don't really know why that's. You don't know why it's happening. You need to find an answer and see why we have this problem, not him.
These awl holes have been made in the same manner as the cylinder case. This has been glued together and is ready to be sewn with an appropriate sized block of wood inside the case. Start sewing here and backstitch one stitch before beginning the running sequence. We start here and aim for the hole that was already started from the other side. The angle of the awl blade is tipped slightly to match the angle that the French stitch marker makes. The needle follows the awl back through the leather. Using the needle in my right hand, I grasp the other needle, binding it together between my thumb and forefinger and pulling it through. Then we follow the thread back through the same hole with the needle that was in my right hand. Notice how I'm dragging a thread back through the same direction of the needle. This will prevent the needle from splitting the thread as it comes through. It is important to hang on to both needles between thumbs and forefingers, also holding on to the awl, cradling it between the thumb and the palm of my right hand. I can work more efficiently this way, rather than picking tools up and putting them back down. This is the same sewing technique that we use to sew the end of the cylinder case that we saw earlier. In our American mindset of expediency, we don't have time to hand sew so much anymore. If we can master these techniques that help us become more efficient, perhaps we will see more hand sewing in the future in this country. We in North America have borrowed much of what we know about leatherwork from the old world, but we've also allowed much of it to slip away within the past century. We were able to recapture some great techniques in our trip to France, but we also came home with something more. We returned home with a deeper understanding of craftsmanship itself.